Hi guys, so this week I'm going to do a video on people who have toxic traits, narcissistic personality disorder, and manipulation. I've got some notes as per usual. So I guess, have you guys ever experienced someone trying to manipulate you or be aggressive towards you in I guess in the fact that they want to try and get a result from that. So the result that they're looking for is some form of control, or I guess to see if you're a suitable candidate. So someone who a toxic person usually looks for is someone who is empathic or codependent. So someone who has probably low self-esteem or quite a high caregiving mentality. People who are quite empathic usually fall into the caregiver category. So it depends on your upbringing, if you were quite independent or had to care for siblings, or maybe even weren't cared for yourself, to what category you might fall into. Okay, so I've got a little list here on a few or 10 different types of manipulation. So the first one is the constant victim. You guys ever know someone who is the constant victim? They've always got problems. They've always, got a reason that you need to save them and support them, but they never really change. That's their mentality. Well, that's a form of manipulation as well. So that's something to look at if it is becoming a problem. We all go through bad times. We all go through times where we're probably a bit negative, but patterns are a good one to figure out whether someone is using the constant victim to get you to do things or control you, or obtain your friendship. So the second one is one-upmanship expert. So someone who is very convinced all the time that they have a better story, or that they know more. You bring up a subject, maybe you've just finished college on this subject, yet they seem to know more than you. Which is a way of someone who's a manipulator validating themselves. So coming to a place where obviously there's so much potential there in themselves, and not even potential, they're already there. They've made it there somehow without really working on themselves. Powerful dependence. So people who use their weaknesses, for instance, someone who maybe it's a parent and they're calling you up and they're saying, oh my God, I need you to come home, even though you're out at a party or you're doing something, because they need you, and you come home because that's your want to look after your family, or you know that they need some kind of assistance. Maybe they could get it elsewhere, maybe they could do it themselves. That falls into powerful dependence because that's a controlling mechanism. Triangulators are people who work with a bunch of people, so 3 or more, and you might find them manipulating all 3. You might find them focusing on you specifically, but they try to tear friendships apart. So they might tell lies, or make up stories, or even tell people that the other person said this about them, etc. So they try to keep you isolated. The blasters, so people who get really angry, they use a fear mentality to kind of control you. Might fall into domestic violence kind of situations there as well. The projector, so someone who's a projector often has a lot of insecurities. They're usually people who tend to find it easy to tell you what's wrong with you, and often the projector projects what's wrong with them onto you. So they might say, you're really controlling, you're a real manipulator, you are a bad friend, and it's all of the things that they are, but they're projecting it onto you, because in a way the projector goes hand in hand with gaslighting, and gaslighting is lying and manipulating and trying to get you to think that you are the problem. Okay, the deliberate misinterpreter. You ever had one of those people that you've met and they deliberately take your words out of order and they make you think that the situation actually wasn't what it was? They you know, get the truths, they misinterpret them, and they make them what suits them, what makes them look better. They forget things purposefully. Okay, the flirt. People who use charm and flirtatious wit to get what they want. You know, they're only interested in their own needs, and they're not interested in yours being met. So they're very kind of self-focused. So yeah, they might use charm and seduction, or even, you know, that girlfriend that you might think is so amazing, and you know, whenever you're around her, you feel like people come to the table but they're not really talking to you, they're talking to her. One of those people perhaps, and she just has you around because she doesn't really want to be alone, or she knows that she's prettier than you, or maybe she's more charming than you, whatever it is. There are people out there like that. Okay, the iron fist. The iron fist are people who use intimidation tactics. So sometimes they can fall into assertive and then passive aggressive and aggressive, but they're using tactics of force to get you to do what they want. The multiple offender. So the multiple offender is when people use a bunch of these and they actually you know, use them for the situation. They're quite skilled manipulators. Usually people who fall into the multiple offender category have NPD, which is Narcissistic Personality Disorder. And in actual fact, if you look at Narcissistic Personality Disorder, the main amount of people that are actually diagnosed with it fall into the 20 to 35 age category. Only 3% fall into the over 65s, which I guess comes down to the society that we live in, being very self-focused and quite, you know, dramaful, and people are always interested in drama and you know, those kinds of people that stand out in the crowd, the look at me types. So I think that the reason that the narcissism is probably in the earlier, younger category probably has something to do with the environment, the society that we live in now. Okay, so narcissism. So narcissistic personality disorder are people who have like a large amount of these traits. Some people might have some traits, but they don't have enough to get diagnosed. So they often have troubles with self-functioning and interpersonal functioning. So, you know, they usually go for outwards gratification to try and fill that hole within themselves. Often people who have narcissistic personality disorder have had something traumatic happen to them in their childhood that has actually triggered the disorder. Like most personality disorders, BPD for instance, comes from a trauma from childhood. Okay, so some signs for NPD are grandiosity, which is a better than thou attitude. They might be bragging, those kinds of things. Antagonism, so obviously manipulation, intimidation, the iron fist. They're usually quite flirty, so attention seeking is another one. And yeah, that's kind of the main three, but now we'll break it down into the smaller signs. So some signs: bragging, like I said, which falls under grandiosity. Self-centeredness, so they very much lack empathy and accountability. The ability to be accountable comes from someone who tries to understand other people's perceptions, looks out from themselves. Someone with NPD finds that very difficult if they ever do it. Okay, so gaslighting. I explain what that is. They lie, they twist the truth. People with NPD are very interested in their reputation. So they want people to see the perception of them to be quite perfect, quite admirable. You know, they want everybody to like them, adore them, yet they don't really tend to give much in a way of authenticity in return. Okay, so gaslighting, they're very interested in manipulating you to get you to believe that you are the problem. Narcissism is one of the only disorders where everybody else is the problem, not them. Okay, so emotional detachment. Emotional detachment is something that usually happens a little bit later, once the narcissist has actually kind of manipulated you to the point where maybe you're starting to realize, or maybe you're starting to put boundaries in place, or maybe it's even a tactic that they're using because you're not overly interested to start with. So they use a technique called adore, devalue, which is a domestic violence kind of technique. It's something that toxic people do to keep things quite interesting. It produces, I can't remember what it was called, but I have researched a little bit on, produces some exciting chemicals in your brain, which becomes quite a hook, quite a trigger for people. So when you're actually separating yourself from that person, or when they start to detach from you, you feel very pulled to give in to their demands, you know, to stop being logical and start being emotional. So instant messaging. Instant messaging is something that the narcissist absolutely loves and needs. So I remember a previous partner of mine, when we first met, he was very interested in spending all of his time with me. And that comes in with being controlling, clingy, overbearing. They need that instant gratification. And like I said, the control. And someone who's codependent is more than willing to provide the avenue for that person to control you. Drama. So something that narcissists absolutely love is drama. Drama will follow them. Drama will invite themselves into their lives, and if it doesn't, they'll go looking for it. So they are very interested in admiration, triumph, and respect. They want everyone's respect, but yet don't often give it. They may seem or appear as they're giving respect, as they're giving empathy or accountability, like I said, but they do not do that in realistic terms, sorry. Controlling. So often people with NPD will look at the person that they're trying to manipulate or control and try and find out how they can do that. Most of them are very calculated in this approach. So they'll look at your Facebook, they'll look at you as a person, what your triggers are, what your weaknesses are, your family, your friends. They might do things like public outbursts, you know, something that might want your friends to not be around anymore. A previous partner of mine used to make a scene if I wanted to go out. You know, there was friends that came over and he would wrestle other people in the yard. You know, he would have arguments with them over nothing. And then my friends didn't want to hang out with me anymore. You know, that's a controlling technique, it's a manipulation technique, and it's very calculated. It's not an accident. Okay, reputation. So that's something to look at. Someone with NPD is very concerned in their reputation, more so than true relationships, because true relationships ask someone to be accountable, to be empathic, and to be authentic. And someone with NPD has many faces. In fact, if you've been living a different face for a certain amount of time, you've been changing, maybe you don't actually know who you are. And that's what we were talking about, self-functioning, interpersonal functioning. People with NPD don't quite know themselves. So that's something to look at. Next page. No means no. So people with NPD see no as a challenge. That's something to look at. I've got some sayings to arm yourself when you're dealing with someone who's quite toxic after this. So yes, if they hear you say something like, I don't really like oysters, but they like oysters, they might actually try and give you reasons and manipulate you, make it seem so interesting and exciting to get you to like oysters. So yeah, they want to try and see if you're a suitable candidate for control. Check your boundaries. So you got to look at what you're compromising, especially in an early relationship when you still have a bit of logic going on there. Emotions haven't completely taken over. So check what you are compromising. Is it worth it? Is this person asking something that you're actually not comfortable with? And how do they react when you do say no? Are they trying to push it? That is a sign of somebody who is insecure and controlling. And do you feel that you are giving more than you're getting? People who have NPD are users and abusers. They will take whatever they possibly can from you. Okay, so arm yourself. Some things you can say to a toxic person. Before I go into this, I'll actually give you an example of a situation with a previous partner I was discussing. So there was an incident, right? You think about reactions and responses. Now, how do you respond when someone who you feel is out to get you or trying to make you react? How do you respond in that situation? I'll give you an example. So I got a phone call on Valentine's Day, mind you, after I had split up with somebody, and they announced to me that they had made their new partner pregnant. And I said, okay. And they said, are you not upset? And I said, no, I'm not. I kind of expected it, actually. And they went on to say, well, we're suited, you know, and everything's going to work out for us here. But obviously you and I weren't suited. So they tried to antagonize even further. And I responded with, look, I'm kind of used to the way that you do things, you know? So then it went on to, are you sure you're not upset? I don't want to have a problem. And I thought, well, clearly you do want a problem because you called a single person who is your ex on Valentine's Day to let her know, you know, that you've moved on. So that's something to be mindful of. They're looking for a reaction. I didn't give it. You know, there are ways that you can do that. So here's some more. So some things you can say to a toxic person. I'm happy with my decision. I'm happy with my decision is an amazing sentence to use. Use it whenever you can, because people will make you doubt, you know, the fact that you've made a good decision. And if you haven't, maybe look at the logic behind it. But yeah, I'm happy with my decision. Fantastic thing to use. I am sorry you feel that way. What you're doing then is you're saying, I'm not actually going to take this on board. What you're saying, you're entitled to, but that is not my problem. I'm sorry that you feel that way, but I'm not going to do anything to change. I'm not going to try and defend myself. There's a few more in regards to that. I can accept your faulty perception of me. So that is an amazing way of just saying, you're entitled to have that perception of me, but that's false. It's actually a false perception, or it's not how I see myself, but I'm not going to defend myself. I have no right to control how you see me. I have no right to control how you see me. How amazing is that? Like I said, not trying to defend yourself, just jumping on and saying that's okay for you to feel that way, and not trying to cause an argument either. I guess I have to accept how you feel. This is inviting acceptance, but also, like I said, not arguing with them. People with NPD, toxic personalities, they want an argument. They're looking for a reaction. Your anger is not my responsibility. So that's an amazing thing, because you're putting the responsibility back on them. You know, it isn't. Your anger is not. Their anger is not your responsibility. Your anger is your responsibility. So let's focus on the end goal. And so you might talk about some solution focused kind of stuff, action plan, you know, create an action plan, that kind of logical stuff. Please don't attempt to manipulate me. So you're being very assertive, but you're also letting them know that you see their behavior for what it is, and you're naming it. It's great to name some behavior that they're putting out. Be specific. I'm placing boundaries in this relationship, and then you would follow with explaining something specific, like next time I would like to meet at this public place. If you want to go further to protect myself or for my safety, or I'm going to document this, etc. It's up to you. What kind of relationship you have with that person depends as well. And this last one, if you continue to behave this way, or in such an aggressive manner, I will be forced to cut contact with you. There we go. So that is all I had written down for today. I did a bunch of stuff, but I was kind of not really sure where to go on this. I wanted to provide the appropriate and correct information. Anyway, guys, I appreciate you joining me again this week. And if you have any topics you want me to discuss, more than happy to research and do that for you. And I hope you have a great week. I hope you've learned something about manipulators. I had an incident with the hairdresser the other day. So manipulation comes in many, many forms, just so you know. And I said no. I said I don't want a haircut. I just want a fringe cut. And she said, she started arguing with me about, you know, giving me a discounted price. And I said, no, I don't actually want a haircut. I just want a fringe cut. And she began cutting my hair and said, your hair is disgusting. You need it cut. It's going to be $18. And I was absolutely mortified. So even if you are assertive, even if you do arm yourself with all of these techniques, be aware something might come up and you might not know how to say no, how to continue to say no. I didn't know what to do. Look at my hair now. It's not overly short. It's about here, but she took a lot of length off. She also cut my daughter's hair on the way out without my permission, and I was very unsure on what to do about it because I had really not been put in a position like that from a stranger before. It's different when I'm talking to someone who I know. I'm quite assertive. Sometimes I'm aggressive. I try not to be, but yes. But with a stranger, it might catch you off guard. It might. So just remember, if something makes you feel uncomfortable, say no. Walk out. You know, there is other things you can do. You can get a haircut somewhere else. I'm not going back there. I'm not going back there. I got my friend who knows how to cut hair to finish cutting my fringe because it was all messed up and it wasn't the same length, and she just did a terrible job. She did an absolutely terrible job, and I was mortified that she would cut my child's hair without my permission and my own. So I feel like I was definitely manipulated, you know, the things that she said to try, and she even told me that if I didn't cut my daughter's hair, that I would have a note sent home from school because you know, that her hair was in her face and it wasn't washed. And I was like, but I was about to wash it today. It was only 2 days ago that I washed it, you know, like she was like, it's dead. Those kinds of things that are quite over dramatized, you know, just so that she could cut her hair. It was absolutely ridiculous. And she tried to promote guilt and shame in me. And I left feeling very vulnerable and very taken advantage of, and I don't want you guys to feel the same thing. So I hope that this information helped. Anyway, bye guys.